Hello friends, welcome back to my channel again. It's been so long and I'm very happy to be back with another book recommendation video, and this time we are going to discuss all about books that you can read in a single sitting or basically in a day. This video is for those who don't have time to read and those who are intimidated to read bigger books, or those who are just starting their reading journey. And I hope there is one book for every one of you, because I have tried to cover a wide range of variety of books and there are 20 books to talk to you about today. So without further ado, let's jump right into the video. Now I'm going to start off this video with some of the very sweet and magical books that I read in the past few months, and this is basically the kind of inspiration where I got this video idea from. These were really very close to my heart and I loved it so much, so I do want to talk to you about it first. So the first book that I want to tell you about is from my very favorite author. If you have been watching my videos, you would know that LM Montgomery is one of my very favorite author of all time. So this time she has written a very short book called The Blue Castle. So this is the only adult romance book that she has written, and it's very fairly short, and this is about Valency, and she's 27 years old but she has not been married yet, and she's kind of a very obedient child to their parents, but no one is happy about her just because she's not married. So one day she finds out that she's going to die of a heart disease and she only got 1 year to live, and everything breaks loose from there. She will go against everything, every rule that she has been set to live out for from their family, and she just goes as a rebel, and it's really very good, and she finds love and she finds her happily ever after there. It's really good, and the love potion, the way she rebels from her parents, and it's all very good. It was such a cozy, nice time, and it's worth reading during the summer season. It's full of potions, and it's kind of very heartwarming for me, and the romance itself is not over the top, and it was very subtle, and I loved it, and I really loved how Valency's character had a very beautiful arc of innocence breaking loose and becoming a rebel, and then loving from her entire heart's content, and it was really good. I highly suggest you to read if you want to have a very nice time just over a weekend, and you want some love sprinkled around in the air. Do check this out. Do you know the feeling that you don't expect something from a book, but it takes you off your guard, and it's all about you can think about? I'm telling about a feeling that a book takes you by surprise. That's the kind of the feeling that this book gave me, and I'm talking about Gentleman from Peru, and it's written by Andre Aciman. I think Acuman or Aciman, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but this story is very short. Once I started reading it, I thought I'll read a couple of chapters and just let it go, but I had it in a single go. I couldn't put this down. It was so superb, and it's about a group of friends who are on the way they're having a vacation basically, and they are staying in a hotel in off coast of Italy, and they see a man in that hotel who they are very interested in because they think that he's kind of peculiar, and they start speculating about his type of career and everything. One day he comes and meets them, and what happens after that is all the story is about. He is the most incredible person that this group of friends meet, and the ending of the story was just wow. I did not expect the story to start this way and end this way. This is really very good. It's one of the best books that I read in a very long time, and I highly recommend you to check this out. I cannot tell more about this book because it will spoil it for you, so I do want to tell you that this is worthy of its read and worthy of your time, and you will feel like you've read something very beautiful at the end of this book. So I hope it will bring you the same kind of tingly feeling that it gave me, and I hope you really like it. The next book is for someone who is interested in middle grade books and someone who is interested in very sarcastic writing, and this is bringing smile to my face because I recently read the entire series here. There are 13 books in the series, but I'm recommending you the very first book, and that is The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. This is part of a series of unfortunate events, and the title itself is very dark and grim, but it is full of despite all the unfortunate events that's happening here, you can't help falling in love with Violet, Klaus, and Sunny. They three are the best trio that you can read about. It's very quirky, it's very nonsensical, and it's really gave me a very good time. I just read all the 13 books back to back. It was so superb, and I do want to recommend this book to whoever who's looking out for books that they can read in a single sitting or in a single day. And each book took me each day. I read all the 13 books in 13 days. I was so obsessed with the characters, the kind of plot, and each book was so different and so beautiful. If you want to read the entire series, go for it. It's worth your time, but do check out the first book at least. It's really, really, really fun to read. The next book that I want to suggest is a classic book, and it is one of my favorite book of all time, and it's very short and very accessible classic. And the book that I'm talking about is Candide by Volatire. This was written by a French writer, and this talks about the kind of optimism that the Candide has. He loves a girl, and the girl is being taken away, and he goes in search of that girl, and the entire journey, the adventure, is all this book is about. And it talks about a lot of philosophies in a very accessible way. I loved the kind of ending it had. It was so beautiful, funny, and I loved this book, and I have been constantly recommending people this book to read, because it's really one of such a book that you should read it once in your lifetime, I guess. And it's very, very short, and you can fairly read it in a single sitting. And just look at the kind of font size. It's very, very big font, so it means that it is actually shorter than it looks, and you can read it in a single sitting. The next book that I want to tell you about is the most randomest book of this entire list, because this goes nowhere near to fiction, and it is a non-fiction book called The Hero by Lee Child. Lee Child usually writes a lot of spy kind of novels, thriller novels, and he is the author of all the Jack Reacher books out there. I have never read anything from him. This is my first time reading Lee Child, but I kind of very much interested in the topic. It spoke about the hero as a concept in our civilization, in our history, and in the future. How this concept of hero came into being and what it actually means. It's a very short book, very, very short book that you can read in a single hour, I guess. In 1 hour, you can just finish this book, and it gave you a kind of a very different perspective of what the hero actually means and how he has created heroes of his own novels. You don't have to read any of the Jack Reacher books or any of the Lee Child books, but this as a standalone itself is really good, and it gave me a very decent fun time. I enjoyed reading this book, and I want to suggest you this. The next book that I want to suggest is also a classic book, but a classic, and it's The Animal Farm by George Orwell. This is a story of totalitarianism, and it's a book against fascism, and it took the world by storm when it was first released, and it is still doing the same, and it is still relevant, and it's still speaking to a lot of people. And the fact that it is still relevant makes it the best book for politics in the classic today. The author has taken characters like from Animal Farm, pigs and other animals, to tell a story of intricate politics that was really, really very interesting. It's very accessible, it's very short, and there is one more book that he has written, 1984. Both speak kind of the same concept in a nutshell, but he has made this book very, very accessible through a lot of funny characters, and you can relate to a lot of stuffs when you finish this book after reading it. And there is a lot of stuff that you can relate to the current political scenario also, and it's a very powerful story. Unlike the other books in this list, this is a very, very powerful story to read, and it's very accessible and very easy to read, and I think everyone should read this. The next book is a book that I have already spoken about quite a few times in my channel, and that book is Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, and this is by Satoshi Yagisawa, and it's a Japanese story of love, of books and coffee, and what else you can need for having a good time with a book. This story follows a girl who's been recently dumped, and she is traveling to a small town with her uncle who's owning a old bookshop, and she lives in the bookshop, and she basically heals while staying in the bookshop. That is the entire story. The relationship between her and the uncle is really very good, and the second half deals with the uncle and his wife's relation, and it was also very good. And I love how the uncle heals her wound and her pain, and how she heals her uncle's pain. It was so beautifully in a circle it was going around, and I loved the story, and it was giving me a kind of a feel-good, heartwarming feeling after I finished it, and that was really, really very good, and I highly recommend you to check this out. The next book is a romance book. I usually don't read romance that much, but this is one of a book, a rare find for me, that gave me that fluttery feels in the heart, and it was so good. The book that I'm talking about is Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawagami, and this is about two people, Tsukiko and Sensei. In this, these two people have a huge age gap. That is where the peculiarness comes from, and that is what interested me to read their romance, and it was so beautiful. you will feel like you have lived out entire life after reading this book, and it is finding happiness and finding love in small things, in day-to-day mundane things is all the love is about. It is I appreciated my life much more after reading this. That is the only thing that I want to tell you about this book. And it's a short book, just like any other Japanese book. It plays around with human emotions that are really, really peaked in this book. And I hope you will love it. Speaking of Japanese book, I have one more book, and I think I have ranted about this book enough on my channel to know or guess which one I'm talking about, and that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshigazu Kawaguchi. And this is a kind of magical realism, sci-fi, and literary fiction, everything blended together. And it's basically a coffee shop where you can travel back in time, and you have to get back from the past before the coffee gets cold. That is the rule, and there are certain other rules that is making it interesting. And it's kind of four anthology stories, four different stories of four different people who have tried to travel to the past and meet their uh, people they knew. And each story is really very heart wrenching, and it's very sweet, and it's full of emotions that you will feel like you have read a very good story after this. For if you're interested in this book, there are three other books in the series, and I think the authors keep on writing one book per year. I think there are four books now, and this book you can read as standalone, or any books you can read as standalone from this series. They will give you enough premise, enough description of what the story is about. And in every book there are four stories, and it follows different people who are traveling to the past. And this gave me it's felt like a very short read because there are multiple stories in it. It felt like a collection of short stories for me, and I hope this will be ideal short book recommendation. The next book is also a classic book, and this book is for all those who have always been wondering what Jane Austen books look like. You always wanted to read one, but you are always intimidated by the kind of books that has been out there. And people always talk about Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion and Mansfield Park. They are all a little bit bigger, but Northanger Abbey is very short, and it's very easy to read. I think, in my opinion, Northanger Abbey is the most accessible Jane Austen book out there, and it's because it's not only a love story, but it is also a satire of Gothic literature. So it's going to be very funny and lighter read compared to the other books that she has written. If you're interested in Jane Austen, you should read every book that she has written. She's a kind of a genius in romance. And this book is much more lighter and much more funnier and much more accessible when it comes to classics. So I hope this will be a very perfect short read for those who are looking out to read Jane Austen. The next book is called The Athena's Child by Hannah Lynn. And if you are like me and you like reading Greek mythology and you don't know where to start this journey from, you should try Athena's Child. Athena's Child is basically Medusa, who has the kind of snakes in her head. You must have seen some pictures or anything if you're not familiar. And when she looks at you, she can turn you into stone. That is the kind of band that she has got from Athena. Basically, Athena is the one who turns Medusa like that. And for an unfair reason, you'll get to know all the details why she turned into that kind of monster in this book. And it's really good, because it's short. They have power packed everything into a very strong and short paced story. I loved the way the story is told, and I loved the perspective of Medusa that has been focused. And Athena, I felt she's very unfair, and the gods in this Greek mythology is usually unfair. If you read it, you'll understand. This was a very good time, and it will introduce you to the periphery of Greek mythology if you're interested in learning some. The next book is the shortest book in this short book recommendation, and you can literally read this in a single sitting within half an hour, I think. And it's a story that you should read. And I'm talking about The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupery. I hope I said it right. He's a French writer, and it's a translated book. And this book is gorgeous with a lot of illustrations. So it's going to be very, very easy to read. And I hope you can get through it very quickly than you have anticipated it to. But the story itself is about an alien who's traveled to Earth and is trying to figure out the kind of way we live. So this is basically about the conversation he has with different people, and all those things will give you a philosophical touch to it. And it is really nice, and it was one of the best books that I ever read in my lifetime. So I highly recommend you to check this out. I just realized that most of the short books are the best books that I ever read, and all the next few books are going to be my all-time favorite books. And one such book is On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. And this is basically a letter that Ocean Vuong writes to his mother, who cannot read English or anything. Through that letter, he is narrating his entire story of lifetime. They are basically from Vietnam, and they are the family who survived the Vietnam War. And it talks about the PTSD, it talks about the survival, it talks about generational trauma. It's kind of a little bit hard and very heart wrenching to read, but it is a must read book. I feel it's very poetic. He's actually a poet, and this is the only fiction book that he has written, I think, because it reflects so much that you can just tell that he's a poet already. It's very beautiful. Lyrical writing and lush writing will take you into the book very soon, and I feel like you should read it once in your lifetime. You know the feeling the books give you, like you don't understand any of it, you're reading until the last page of that book. I love that kind of books. I love books that make me keep guessing and keep thinking what I'm reading, and it doesn't make sense until you finish that book. This is one such book, and it's called The We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, and I bet you that you will not understand anything until you read the last chapter. It's really good. You're reading it from the perspective of a main character called Candace, and she's figuring out why people are lying to her, why people are patronizing her, and she has no idea. And she, with her family, spends every summer in an island in a guest house. And one such summer, she's going there. People are acting weird, and it kinds of disturbing her. And finally, she figures out why, and it's like, oh my god, it blows your mind. The story was brilliantly written, and I read in a single sitting. I started it at 7 o'clock in the night, and I slept after finishing it only. I could not put this book down, and it is a perfect short book to read, to binge, and in a single sitting. So these short books are not shorter enough for you. I have it covered. This is a book that you can read in 15 minutes, and this is Galatea by Madeline Miller, a short story. And it is basically about a girl, about a sculptor who's sculpting a perfect woman. And I think this is also Greek mythology, and it's about who talks about a lot of kind of rules for women, what makes a woman perfect, and that kind of things. And she gives it a feminine twist to it. It's very short. I don't want to talk about it, otherwise I will spoil it for you. Read it. Madeline Miller is a very, very brilliant writer. She is a strong, and she's one of the pro at storytelling, I feel. So this story will be a very good read for you. Just check it out. It's fairly short, and you cannot give any excuses to skip this one. The next one is also from my favorite author, but I have only read one book. I'm calling it my favorite author from a single book. Then you should understand how powerful this book might be. And I'm talking about Watch Over Me by Nina Lecour. This talks about a girl who's just out of foster system and finding her way in the society. She has to now live her life and find job and everything, but there is a past that has been haunting her, and she has to deal with it. She has to heal from it. The entire healing process is this book about, and it was really, really something. I loved how there's a kid in that book, and the relationship between that girl Mila and that kid was very, very beautiful, very heartwarming. I love this book, and it's fairly short. Each chapter is like a half paragraph or a single sentence or something like that. You'll feel like you're skimming through this book fairly fast. So that will give you an illusion of finishing this book faster than you expected. So this book is very apt for binging in a single day. We have almost come to the end. We have only two books to talk about. The 19th book that I want to talk to you about is House of Hollow by Krystal Sutherland. This is a thriller book, and it's horror thriller, and it's one of a kind. I've never read any horror or any thriller book of this kind. The twist at the end was so mind-blowing that I never expected it to happen. It was something else. I just couldn't comprehend the fact that the writer chose this kind of ending to this book. It was really very good. If you're interested in reading horror thriller books, it was a little bit horrifying. It's not just a plain thriller, and it was giving me the vibe of having Terminator 2 as a book, but with a horror twist. The last book that I want to talk to you about is one of my favorite book of all time. If at all I want to suggest only one book to my followers or my friends or anyone, I'm restricted to only one choice, then I would suggest this book to read, because this is a must-read book in your lifetime. That is The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku. This is a non-fiction book written as a memoir, and this author, Eddie Jaku, is a survivor of the Auschwitz concentration camp of Nazi Germany. And he literally tells you the story of how he survived the concentration camp and what happened to him while he was there. Some of the stuff that you read here you will never forget, and it will make you really very it's really eye-opening to know that how much horror can human have in them, but it also tells you that how much goodness and how much kindness people can have in them. The entire book speaks about how cruelly he was treated by other humans, but he lives and he survives to tell you that not everyone is like that, and he is calling himself the happiest man on earth. You should read this book to get to know this man, and he lived 101 years, and until he died he was spreading love, and he was talking about his problems in Auschwitz camp, and it's a remarkable life that he has lived, and he has given this gem to the world. And I feel like this book will stand through time, test of time, and everyone should read it. And I hope you will love this book as much as I did. So that is pretty much it, guys. These are all the 20 books that I wanted to tell you, and I hope you find at least one that is interesting to you. And do let me know in the comments if you have read it and liked it, and do recommend me more short books that I can check out. And I do want to talk to you guys. It's been a while and I've missed you all, so do let me know in the comments. I would love to chat with you. And until I see you again in a very next video with the bookish content, this is Sushmita signing off. Keep reading. Bye bye.